Good evening. Welcome back. Terrifying nights. I decided to get a little treat for you guys by providing you with another truck driver. In my email, I found scary stories from unknown people that I wanted to share with all of you. My friends, it's a real horror. However, if any truckers have more stories they'd like to share, please do so. If anyone in the family wants to share more scary stories, you can do so through my email in the description. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. However, sit back, relax, turn off the lights, and don't look back.
This incident took place on a warm evening in early spring. I remember the scene vividly. My dad was at the wheel, and I sat beside him in the passenger seat. In the back, my twin sister and younger brother were dozing off in their seats. Our destination was a rustic family cabin located deep in the woods of northern Michigan, a journey that spanned several hours from our home in Indiana. At the time, my sister and I were 14 years old, while my brother's peaceful slumber continued. Our family cherished this annual retreat to the cabin, making the anticipation on that evening palpable. However, the truck ride itself was consistently grueling. The absence of air conditioning in the truck combined with the absence of smartphones meant that we relied on a patchy radio signal for entertainment during the 4-hour drive. As a result, my sister and I often found ourselves gazing out of the windows, creating stories about the people we glimpsed along the way. One favorite pastime of ours was attempting to coax other truck drivers into honking their horns as we drove by them, a satisfying challenge whenever they obliged. This seemingly innocent game unwittingly marked the beginning of a troubling encounter. Despite our young age, my sister and I had started to draw attention from older men. We were developing early, which led to uncomfortable encounters, much to our dad's annoyance. About 2 hours away from our woodland haven, I made eye contact with a trucker and playfully signaled for him to sound his horn. He flashed a grin and promptly complied, causing me to break into a smile. However, this interaction took an unsettling turn when he continued to stare and drive alongside us. His gaze extended beyond me to my sister and our dad. It was clear he had taken an interest that was entirely unwelcome. Though the gestures he made went over our heads at the time, they were undoubtedly vulgar, as my dad realized. Sensing the discomfort, he instructed me to avoid eye contact and cease encouraging him. In an attempt to distance ourselves from the situation, he adjusted his speed, but the trucker matched our pace. This pattern repeated over and over. No matter what my dad did, he persisted in maintaining his proximity to our vehicle. The highway was quiet, offering us no refuge from his presence. A glance confirmed his obscene actions, shattering our innocence. Frustration escalated, and my dad gestured at him in defiance. The lewd smile only grew broader in response. As the road narrowed to 2 lanes, tension escalated further. The trucker aggressively cut in front of us, positioning his truck ahead. In this remote stretch, the surroundings were desolate, with barely any cars in sight. The right lane hugged a towering mountain, while the left was separated by a safety railing and a steep drop. The roads grew twistier as dusk settled in, casting shadows that deepened our unease. The trucker slowed down and began weaving into the left lane as my dad attempted to overtake him. Anger surged within him, pressing his foot on the gas pedal. He mirrored the trucker's speed, a dangerous dance unfolding as both vehicles veered into the opposite lane. Fear consumed my sister and me, and our brother's tears joined our cries. Panic etched itself onto my dad's face as he wrestled with the steering wheel. The trucker reveled in our terror, swerving with malevolent intent. My dad slammed on the brakes and we lurched to the right, narrowly avoiding collision with the mountain wall. The trucker, undeterred, persisted in his actions, pushing us to the edge. A moment of dread hung in the air as we teetered on the brink of disaster. My dad's unwavering determination proved instrumental as he maneuvered us back onto the correct lane after several harrowing attempts. Dread lingered, a reminder of the abyss we narrowly escaped. I, prone to motion sickness, clutched a plastic bag, my stomach churning from fear. My dad rolled down the windows as we continued in silence, the weight of the ordeal hanging heavily upon us. The last stop before reaching our cabin materialized in the form of a rural gas station. Its humble appearance belied its significance. In the dimly lit restroom, I rinsed away the fear, while my dad tended to us, the ordeal having transformed us all. Night enveloped us as we resumed our journey. A muted tension filled the air, words unnecessary as the road stretched ahead. Upon reaching the cabin, my sister and I attempted to process the trauma, but my dad halted our conversation. He dismissed the incident, attributing it to the sad reality of men's behavior, not our own allure. Emotionally exhausted, he sought solace by the campfire, seeking refuge in the calming embrace of nature. My sister and I retired to bed, shadows of the event lingering. Reflecting on that night, I'm grateful that tragedy was averted. Our near miss with the precipice and the mountain's wall remain etched in our memories, a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk even in the most serene settings. I used to be a truck driver until around 2022 when I retired due to a back injury. Back in the late 2000s, something happened that I never told anyone about. I made a big mistake back then, and it would completely ruin my life if anybody found out. It's been weighing heavily on my conscience lately, so I decided to share it. It was my 3rd or 4th year on the job, and I was doing some less desirable routes while I worked my way up in the company. I was really thankful to my boss for hiring me because I had a criminal record at the time. I did some time in prison for an armed robbery when I was 21 years old, so it was a pretty big deal for me to find work that paid as well as this job. Because of that, I was doing a lot of night driving. Nothing interstate, so I did get to sleep in my own bed most days. It was early June and I lived in the Midwest, although I won't get too specific about the location. I was driving a remote stretch of road around midnight. As you might expect, the road was almost empty at that time of night. It was a really surreal experience to watch the white lines on the highway go by one after another. It was almost hypnotizing. Once or twice an hour, I would see a car or truck drive by, and even that mild stimulation was a welcome break from the monotony. It's a disturbing but little-known fact that many truck drivers, up to half, have admitted to falling asleep at the wheel at some point, and on this night, I was close. I took a big sip of my coffee as my eyelids started to flutter. When I looked back up at the road, I saw something in the distance. There was a green light off to the side of the highway. I squinted to get a better look, but that didn't help. I wasn't sure if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. As I got closer, it became clear that it was a car, and the green light was the rear taillights. Keep in mind that this was the middle of the night, so it was really unusual to see that. I pulled over to the side. I knew I had to check it out. Not only was it my duty to help, but I also needed to take a break, so I used this as an excuse. I stopped 20 or 30 feet behind the car and got out. When I was walking towards it, I could see that the car was off, and the light I saw was just my headlights reflecting off of the taillights. When I reached the driver's side window, it was too dark to see in. I had a small flashlight attached to my keychain, so I pulled it out and turned it on. When I peered into the car, I could see that the front seat was empty, and I could also see that the keys were still in the ignition. When I pointed the light to the back seat, I saw something that turned my stomach. There was someone lying on the bench seat in the back, and he was covered with blood. I can't explain exactly why, but for some reason, I knew right then and there that he was dead. I immediately turned away and fought back a wave of nausea. When I was done, I pulled the handle on the back door. It was unlocked, and I swung it open and reached in to feel the guy's pulse. My worst fears were confirmed. He was dead. I know I should have gone straight to the police at that point, but some doubt found its way into my mind. I had been through the criminal justice system before, and I thought that if I reported it, I could get blamed. I was a convicted felon, and in my mind, that could be enough to attract suspicion. I walked back to the driver's side door and got in. I started the car and began driving. I knew the area well, and there was a small river a few miles away. I headed there, planning to push the car in. As I drove, I kept looking into the back seat, hoping the man would wake up. I knew that wouldn't happen, though. He was cold as ice when I touched him. When I got to the river, I stopped the car and shifted it into neutral. Then I pushed it into the water and watched it slowly sink beneath the surface. Tears were streaming down my face the entire time. I stood there until it was completely submerged and started to walk back to my truck. I regretted my decision right away, but it was too late to turn back. I walked through the fields next to the highway so nobody would see me just in case another car came by. I watched the road from a distance, and when I was in sight of my truck, I saw a police car. It stopped next to my truck. I was pretty much freaking out because I knew I would have to talk to the officer. I took a few seconds to dry my tears and try to compose myself. Then I walked out of the fields towards my truck. The police officer got out of his car and walked towards me on the side of the road. He asked me if I was all right and if I needed help. I told him I was fine, and I just stopped to stretch my legs. We talked for a few minutes about random things, and he turned around and went back to his car. I was worried that he would bring up the man in the car, like if somebody else called it in, but he didn't. I got back into my truck and finished my shift that night, and every night for the next 15 years. I still drive past that spot on the highway, and every time I do, I remember what I did that night. I know I was wrong, and looking back on it with a clear mind, it seems unlikely that I would have been a suspect in the death. You never know, though. What's done is done, and there's no way. I was a truck driver for different companies 10 years ago. 3 years ago, I worked for a warehouse company in Kansas City. On one occasion, several loads had to be shipped, so I endeavored to complete everything quickly. Truck driving started at 3 p.m. to reach the destination in the same night. After midnight, I was very tired, but the destination was less than 1 hour away. I thought I could reach him easily, so I wiped my face and drank water to refresh myself. The road was very dark, and suddenly I saw someone quickly approaching. I hit the brakes and tried to get out of shape. He was dressed in black with a black scarf around his neck, and he was looking at me. I was scared at first, but then I got a little closer to ask him if he needed help. However, he soon entered the woods, and rather than follow him, I decided to keep driving. After a few seconds had passed, I felt a growing fear, but decided to continue driving because I was tired. Suddenly, a strange object appeared on the road. It looked like a big animal, but when I got closer to it, it turned out to be the mysterious person I met earlier. With a lot of tiredness, exhaustion, and the desire to reach the destination as quickly as possible, I decided to find a way around it. After I got over it, I decided to take a break. But when I woke up, I felt someone close to me. I opened my eyes and found the mysterious man looking at me with a wide smile and his eyes shining. I drove a truck fast and drove away as fast as I could. I didn't know exactly what the mysterious man was thinking, but I thought maybe tiredness and exhaustion had affected my perceptions and made me see strange things all night long. Fortunately, I did not suffer any injuries.
Stanzen resided in a quaint village in the Scottish Highlands. Located in the countryside, it wasn't surrounded by thick forests or anything like that. Nearby villagers lived a stone's throw away, and there was a historic chapel about a kilometer away, easily accessible on foot. About 6 years ago, I decided to take up cycling for fitness, riding to the church entrance and back. On a mild twilight, I set out to cycle, choosing to go straight ahead rather than turn toward the church. As I was driving back, I saw an old Ford pickup truck in turquoise and cream. Behind the wheel was a striking young man. Oddly enough, the rumble of the engine was absent, but the truck was driving straight at me. Then she suddenly swerved towards the church. Surprisingly, there was no dust rising in its wake, nor any engine hum. This happened in the midst of the summer season. Dust and engine jets were supposed to accompany it, but there was an eerie silence. He made a sudden swerve as if to complete a loop, and I pedaled my bike with all my might. I have never been consumed by fear. It was a bone-chilling experience, to say the least. I never ran down that road again. The truck remained unseen until 2010. My brother and I were standing in the open. The sun had not yet set when the same truck pulled out of the driveway. I got to my mom's house and she instantly disappeared. Hours passed, but nothing happened. We were so freaked out. Right after I finished watching a tingling show with my brother, our conversation turned toward troubling topics. I recounted the truck encounter. Soon after, we spotted her for 3 nights in a row. I went down the aisle, headlights shining, and those ceiling lights, one of them was out. He traveled down the corridor and melted into the air. However, on the 4th night, When the van failed to appear, we embarked on a mission to locate it. Fortunately, our search proved fruitless. Since then, I've never crossed paths with the truck again. But tonight, I may lay eyes on her, all because of my memory. The thought bothers me. Could it be an omen or some other alarming sign? If anyone from the rural expanse of the Scottish Highlands has encountered a similar van, please get in touch. My curiosity about its origins, if any, knew no bounds.